Chapter 38 of the Book of Anna by Carmen Boullosa, translated by me, Samantha Schnee. The title of the chapter is An Opium-Infused Fairy Tale, the Book of Anna by Anna Karenina. Once upon a time, a woodsman and his wife lived deep in the forest with their 6-year-old daughter, Anna. Theirs was a hard life, and their daughter was their only joy. It had been a long winter, and there was little food for the table, yet the girl laughed, impervious to hunger, cold, the dark, and her parents' constant ill humor. One day, before sunrise, the woodsman, who never laughed, just like his wife, leaves the cottage and begins to walk, cutting a gaunt, disagreeable figure, his axe and some rope in his hands. He knows his search is in vain. The birds and the ducks have all flown south. The bears, the snakes, the wildcats, and even the creepy crawlies are all hidden away, settled down for a long winter's nap. The fish hide beneath the ice. His memory leads him to a path, and there he glimpses something in the pale light of the moon, which also looks frozen. The woodsman takes stiff steps. His head is heavy, as if it's filled with cold water. A light breaks the darkness, so bright that he can no longer see the path. Could it be the reflection off the blade of my axe? How is that possible, he asks himself. He's so cold inside, he can no longer think clearly. He recalls old tales of men who lost their minds because of their weapons. Instinctively, he moves the axe in his hand, but the light doesn't change. He lifts his face to the sky, eyeing the splendorous light, but can't see a thing. The moon has been outshone, no longer visible. Then he thinks, the stars have all died. Light that obliterates all other light is dangerous, but this thought doesn't occur to the woodsman. Neither does he think of the sky as black velvet. He was born poor. He waits a little while for his eyes to adjust. At risk of getting lost, he stumbles in the direction of the shining light. It's coming from a woman dressed in iridescent blue satin, sparks flying from her fingernails and teeth, her hair filaments of light. She opens her mouth to speak, and he sees the source of the light inside her mouth. I know your daughter is hungry. Why let an innocent girl suffer when I can help you? Bring her to me, and I will look after her and protect her. Sparks fly with each of her words, accompanied by a clap of thunder. The woodsman backs away without saying a word, without taking his eyes off the woman. She opens her mouth wider like she's yawning, and even more light pours forth. She's lit up from inside. When he reaches the path, the illuminata fades into darkness silently. It takes some time for the woodsman to get his bearings. In the sky, he sees the far-off splendor of the rising sun, which means his home must be somewhere to the right. So he goes left, brandishing his axe, declaring, I'm going to find something to eat. I'm hungry. A pair of eyes blink at him, knee-high. The woodsman lifts his axe. The eyes regard him. They belong to an animal, though he can't see what kind. The animal says calmly and without an accent, You'll get only one meal out of me. Feed me to your wife and daughter. I'll be the last thing you eat this winter. You'll die of hunger. Don't be a fool. Give your daughter to the Illuminata. The animal laughs the same laugh as the woodsman's daughter. Although the creature's words paralyze the woodsman and its laugh terrifies him, he lets his axe fall on his prey. Hunger trumps fear. The animal's warm blood splatters the woodman's face. He trusses its legs with his rope without noting what kind of animal it is, and begins to return home with his quarry. His wife and Anna both receive him, clapping with joy and with cold. The girl laughs the same laugh that was the animal's final utterance. The woodsman shuts his eyes, and the girl, like her mother, thinks it's because he's tired and his belly is empty. The mother begins to prepare the creature for stewing. Anna wipes her father's face, wetting the edge of her skirt with his water jug and rinsing it afterward, singing, Finally, We have some food on the fire. The girl sings, and as if it's part of her song, she laughs. And each time she laughs, the woodsman's blood grows colder. The threesome sits at the table. When the hunter is served his stew, he doesn't take a single bite. He can't eat the creature whose eyes he looked into, who foretold a future of grief. He recalls the animal's words, "You'll all die of hunger." Anna laughs. The man cries. The woman and the girl eat. They're so happy to have food that they don't even realize the woodsman is crying. He thinks, my wife is going to eat me because grief will kill me before hunger does. Before they finish their servings, he wipes his eyes, closes them, and doesn't open them again until the table has been cleared. When Anna falls asleep, the woodsman tells his wife everything about his two encounters. She makes up her mind. We must not eat any more of this meat you've brought home. Not you, not I, not Anna. We have no way of knowing it's not the meat of evil, and you should take the girl to the woman of light. I have no doubt she's the virgin. She's the only one who has an internal light, and that Our Lady will look after her. And once this horrible winter has ended, we'll see her again. She'll bring her back to us happy and healthy. The woman can't possibly be divine. If you could only see the light when she speaks, you feel. The woodsman can't express how this woman's words shine like jewels that have been extracted from a mine with the sweat and toil of mankind, because he's never laid eyes on such jewels. He doesn't even know what a mine is or where to find one. If he had, he'd never forget the jewel's glitter. He's a woodsman. If he knew where to find a mine or knew that precious stones could be polished, he would have gone and asked for a job. Digging and polishing would be preferable to dying of hunger, and blackening his lungs would be better than being stewed without salt by his own wife. Give her our girl. She's the virgin. She knows all. Give her our daughter, but don't tell her her name. If she's not the virgin, she won't be able to call her Anna, and our daughter will come back and find us, because no one can live without hearing their own name. But it's impossible for the woodsman to explain what he wants to say. All right, she says, seeing him babble like a poor fool. Take Anna before we get hungry again, because I won't give her any more of that meat you brought us. I'll throw it away in the hollow where the wolves can eat it. Before dawn, the woodsman leaves the cottage, Anna asleep in his arms. He heads in the same direction as the previous day, but before his feet become stiff with cold, the bright light appears, the illuminata behind it. The radiance awakens the girl, and she laughs, as she always does, at the sight of the illuminata and reaches out to her. The illuminata embraces her, and they disappear. The light fades. The grayness of the day falls on the woodsman, a heavy burden. He walks home. He's so overcome he doesn't hear the wolves howling, the ones who ate the stew his wife threw away in the hollow during the night. They don't howl like normal wolves. They seem to speak, and the sound of what they say is terrifying. Thank you. Hi, Carmen.
Hi, Samantha. I'm so excited about the idea of making you an interview. We have had the chance of working together for many years. It's been for me a privilege, a joy. You have been very patient. You are incredibly talented. And always the translator is like a behind the scenes. Luckily, the translators have fought for their name in the cover of the books, have fought for their space in the text. But I read many classics as a kid in Porrua, a beautiful publishing house, and they never had the name of the translator. So I can tell you all the Dostoevskys, the Pushkins, the Tolstoys. I read without knowing who had written them in the language I was reading them. French, Chateaubriand, many things I read, Victor Hugo, as a kid, as a teenager, as a young reader. And that is something that is not not correct, because we know very well that the translator is also the writer. So that's all I have to say. I have some questions for you. We are going to talk today about the adventure of translating El libro de Ana, the book of Anna. I want to ask you, I know it is a very peculiar book. I know that the tone in a writer is something difficult to get. I know how much I struggled getting the tone of the book. And I also know that one tone was not going to be enough because it changes inside the book. So the first question would be, how did you dare and how did you choose the tone to start working with this text?
I think it was different from Texas, because Texas is one big panoramic story that you start and it starts galloping like a horse and it goes all the way through to the end. And the Book of Anna is very different because it's like the Russian dolls, the Matryoshka doll. You have the story that Anna wrote for her son inside the story of the Russian Revolution. So the first step for me was to read the whole book and digest it and think about the different voices and the different registers of the different parts of the book. And I think the second part was to go back to the edition of Anna Karenina that I read when I was pregnant with my first son. So that's 20 years ago. And it was from the translation of Louise and Elmer Maude. And I think because it was the translation of that era, that the one that was made into English that's closest to the time when the Book of Anna happens, it helped me get into the diction of the time.
The diction of the time. And after getting that first tone, did you need to again go back to the first, let's say you had already translated 6 pages, then you went back to reread them, because I guess that's the way we writers work, revising, looking at what we've done and continuing. And did you doubt it? Your tone was, or did you know that the first you had chosen was the one you had? Or did you have to try, after having taken a decision and getting in the mood, reading, that I think is a beautiful way of doing it, and in this case, not reading one author, but also reading the translation of the author that had given the sparkle for the writer to write the book.
Yes.
So how was that? You chose it, you got in the mood, you wrote, we know that's very different, and then you had to rechange the tone, or?
I think the beginning pages are always the hardest, because you have to search for the mode of the storytelling. I think in this case, I did a lot of early preparation to lay the groundwork, so I didn't struggle so much, because I remember really struggling with the epigraphs, for example, and there's one from Tolstoy as well, and that really got me thinking about the tone of the book also. So, you can tell a lot from an epigraph and from what an author chooses. I think most of the translation, the bulk of the manuscript, I translated in the first draft during 1 week when I was in a residency for translators And we had no responsibilities. We just stayed in this beautiful house, which used to belong to Ted Hughes. And then at dinner time, we would have our chores, so either cooking or cleaning or whatever. And that gave me a luxury of having the uninterrupted thought and the process of getting all of that done in one big chunk. And I think that made a really big difference too, because when you stop and start as a writer, it's quite time consuming. The hard part is starting again. And I remember once reading that Hemingway said, I always stop before I have nothing left to write, because I know that I'll be able to start again in the morning with where I was about to finish. And I think that it's different for a translator because you have the map. For me, this was my map, and I followed it. I don't have to imagine what's going to happen next as a translator, but the luxury of having that time, the week of uninterrupted peace and quiet, was very helpful, I think, in making the voice and the tone consistent where it needed to be. And then because I had so much silence around me, to pay attention to the difference in register between the story of the revolution and the story that Anna wrote for Sergei.
Me as a writer, you are telling this story, and I think, or I ask myself, I'm not going to go into my next note I had here, but I ask myself, is it that a translator writes inhabiting somebody else's house always? Could it be that it was for you so perfect to work there on a translation, not only because you had done the preliminary work before, because you had asked, because you had reread the Anna Karenina from Tolstoy, because you knew the author, because you heard me talk, because you also knew I had struggled with the book, you knew the background of the book by then. Mm-hmm. Not only because of all that, but also because you were in a space that is not your space.
Right.
In a house that, by the way, belonged to a writer, but that is not your house. For me as a writer, it's incredibly difficult to really get it all if I'm not in my own territory. Mm-hmm. I can continue writing, and then I write in a plane, in a hotel room, in wherever I fall. But when I already don't know where am I, when I am totally deep inside in my ghosts or world or whatever it is. But this description you said, could it be that a translator who is a writer too is the brand of writer that needs to write to inhabit the house that belongs to somebody else? You understand the question, or my English is too?
No, I think it's maybe like a hermit crab. You know how when they outgrow their shell, they move to another shell.
I love the idea of the hermit crab, because we have to know that the crab that's inside is so different from the snail that he inhabits. And that would explain how so many writers feel betrayed by a very good translator.
Yeah.
But we also know that the crab you are talking about, the hermit crab, has to have a very peculiar wisdom, because if not, he would not survive. He has to know which space he is inhabiting.
I think the hermit crab has to know how to choose the right size shell, has to be the right size house. And that's definitely true for me as a translator. I can't just translate anyone or anything. Some work that I have done has been much more difficult than other work. And I think when that happens, there's mismatch between me as a translator and the text I'm translating. And it's not to say that I think it's shouldn't be done. I think it's always good to stretch yourself and push yourself in a different direction. But given a choice, I would much rather translate for my next project, The Book of Eve, your new novel, than something by a male author that I was working with another time that it was more of a struggle.
We are listening to the streets of Mexico City that refuse to be quarantined. So no, but that is not a vendor. I can't believe it. This is a state announcement. I know it's both. It's a vendor that's using, we are in a sanitary alert emergency, but he's selling mangoes at Ataulfo. So it is, it's unbelievable. I am astonished. The kind of private concerts I have had, the amount of musicians that come and play in my corner, the kind of visitors that have come to sell me, because people have to survive. I understand that on one side, and there hasn't been the step forward to help them stay at home. Sorry, I left the crap, but we are going to return to it right now. But I did not want to interrupt the conversation, and it was the moment to smuggle in the city. So I think that the last thing you said, Samantha, is for me extremely interesting, because as you know, as I am a strange writer that writes absolutely always in any mood I am, like a possessed, not always by me, even I know that you're working with me, sometimes you have gone like zuck, like the last thing we did together, this dialogue between Siri Hofstede and Boullosa. For me was to see you writing. You were by far better than me. I mean, it was incredible, and the way it reads in English, it's so powerful and so perfect. And you did it like in a blow, meaning like you did it so quick and as if we were talking. But some other times you struggle. You did with Texas, for example, at the beginning.
Yeah.
With the novela perfecta, the perfect novel. Oh my God. And it is like, it's not my voice. And it is like it was not your voice. And it is like it is wonderful in English, because also it's so incredible. No, that means it's just a little commentary. How in reality, yes, a translator is a writer.
I definitely agree with that statement, but I think, you know, the fundamental difference is, I think a writer who's writing their own craft has to be much more disciplined than a translator, in a sense, because you have to sit down and create out of nothing, like God, you know? Nothing, whatever it is that you're going to write, it hasn't existed before and will never exist again in the same way. So, you know, as a thinker, you know, I have written a variety of things over the years, but the second part for a writer is you actually have to put yourself out there. You have to put your work out there. And again, that's another huge effort that I think some wonderful writers never make. I think of the Confederacy of Dunces, which was published posthumously because the author just wrote it on legal pad, you know, and then
by his mother. That's for me always so disturbing.
Yeah, I know.
There are two cases that I know, him and that mother in the novel, at least that relationship with motherhood and the mother making the book come out, and Delmira Agustini, the Uruguayan poet, who wrote this incredible, subversive, super erotic, more than erotic, hyper erotic poems that talks of things that are completely, my grandmothers would have thought abominably indecent. They are the same generation almost, by the way, that's why I make the comparison. And her father was the one who used to transcribe her poems and put them abroad. And when she died, killed by her husband the day of her divorce, he signed the divorce, that they had a private meeting in her room. Finally, she had a room of her own. And I think she traded the signature for that last meeting, is my theory. The father is the one that fought for the image of something that my grandmothers would have hidden in their closets from their parents, evidently, but even from their friends. And the father, maybe the mother could find, no. And it is, sorry, this is again another deviation. I'm getting out of our theme. And I'm going to contradict you with one thing. I do think that the writer writes something, but I don't, even though said from somebody like me that I'm a weird author, I'm not like writing the opportunistic thing that's floating, no, but I never feel that book in reality was not there before. It's something so strange. I always feel that when a book really works or a poem really works, it has to do with a very deep connection with what's going on outside.
Yeah.
I really get the vibe of the deep soul of the rest of the people and the other writers. Always this deep, this incredible. It's like we writers are not like the bushes or the tips of the bushes that grew, but we are part of the root, this rhizoma that grows aside. So you work with the other writers, and yes, with the oxygen that's floating there, because if not, the root wouldn't expand. But you always get this connection. And there again, to defend my point, I think translators are only another kind of writers.
I like the way you said that. I won't disagree with you. It's just perhaps a different way of writing. Maybe some writers would find it harder work. And I think some writers find it easier to take the approach of translation. I think of Ha Jin, who gave some lectures at Rice University a couple of years ago. I went and I asked him afterwards, why don't you translate your own work? Because he originally wrote in Chinese, but then I think he said he translated one and he hated translating it so much. He said, I'll never translate my own work into English again. And that's why he started writing in English instead, because I think, as a writer, he said, I just can't keep going over the same territory. As a writer, I moved on.
I understand. Yeah. I would vomit. It's so difficult. I had to do it once giving a course. I love to teach. And I always choose my favorite authors to talk about them and reread them and find new things. And they invited me, Clermont-Ferrand, the Blaise Pascal University, to give a course. And they told me, we want a course about your work, a book of yours. And I chose El Complot de los Románticos, that you also know, because you've translated parts of it. And I chose it because there are so many authors present inside as characters that I was going to go into their worlds. And when they saw my syllabus, the Comité Scientifique, the person in charge of it told me, no, we want you to read your book. And it was too late, I couldn't cancel. So I had to go through a whole semester with my students, reading again a book I had written years ago. And it was for me very depressing, not because I didn't like the book, but because I couldn't care less. I was in another world. I wanted to be writing other book, and it was like translating for the students, working with them, perfect Spanish they spoke, but working with them phrase after phrase, the French way. And oh my God, cheese and wine saved me. It wasn't so easy to be there alone without my house, my onions, my kitchen, my husband, and teaching myself. So That's the thing. I understand that very well. So let's go back to you and I think we don't have much time left.
Yeah, I think maybe 5 more minutes.
My question would be, what is for you your biggest satisfaction when you finally see your book,
Mm.
uh, when you know it, you did it all. What is your, if you have a satisfaction or anxiety, or what is your reaction with it?
I
With
think
our baby, Samantha. Our
it is like
baby.
a baby. It's absolutely like a child. Um, because the gestation period was almost 9 months, I think, from the time I started until I finally finished. And I think for me, it's seeing how different readers approach the text and are inspired by the text. Just reading in the last few days some of the reviews, it's fascinating to see which parts resonate with different readers. And I think one of the reviews said, I can't remember which one. It said, heady as fuck, which, is a really nice compliment because in parts of the text, it's quite erotic and overwhelming. And I think heady is a great word to describe some of the prose. And that's the fun part for me, to see how different readers experience it. What about you?
When I finish a book in my own language, I avoid the depression because I've known that depression and I'm always working in another book.
Yeah.
I immediately go, like, I send them to an orphanage. I'm the worst carer of my own children. I really, and then comes the process of editing and the rest, and I'm so disgusted because I don't want to let it finally not be mine.
Yeah.
And it gives me a sense of loss that not even a very beautiful object gives
Yeah.
me the consolation. But when it's the translation, I do feel a lot of joy. In this case, particularly because Samantha is our baby. We have worked so much time together.
Yeah.
The book is beautifully edited.
Yes.
I feel excitement about it, and we have been very lucky. Bookslot was the one who did that.
That's right.
We have been till now very lucky. Even the ones that we had one review that really said, "Oh, the book didn't get what it was."
Right.
But even I felt that I liked it because it's such a strange book
Yeah.
that the miracle is that people like it.
Yeah.
There we have another vendor of the city. Maybe Mexico City is going to end our conversation. Samantha, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you, to the fact of working with you, an intelligent, careful, respectful person that knows how to ask questions, that looks very shy, but you dare ask all kinds of questions, that has been able to trap me when I have no longer interest in my ex-baby. I'm already in another planet. It's been for me a very satisfactory. I love your translation of the Book of Anna and the other books, but in this case, we are talking of her baby.
Yeah.
I love the work that Coffee House has done with us. I'm grateful to them too.
Yes.
And I am so happy we are at St. Jordi now in New York City. That is also my city, and is now in this moment of so much pain.
Yeah. I agree. It's nice to be able to do something for New York.
Something alive for
Yeah.
a city that has given us so much life and
Yeah.
so much.
Exactly.
Me, even a husband. All from New York, a beautiful husband. Okay, thank you,
All right.
Sam.
Carmen, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Same for you. Bye-bye. Here a little reading from the Book of Anna, written by me, Carmen Boullosa, but also written by Samantha Schnee, the translator, and published by Coffee House Press in the English version. In her version, Samantha's version. I'm going to read a sip from part 27, back in the Karenin Palace kitchen. What I heard was bullets, Mayam. Before the swords, there were bullets. We were 200 feet from the Narva Triumphal Arch. We could see the river. The soldiers fired 3 times into the air. The 4th shot was the signal to change. They kept firing until they were out of ammunition. Then the Cossacks came at us. An older man, who's sweating excessively, is speaking. His hands are covered in blood and he has a cut on his cheek that's barely bleeding, and he fits in shock too. Whether it was bullets or steel, there's a body in front of them wrapped in a cloak lying in the kitchen table. Blood begins to trickle along the surface, slow and thick. The cloak is the body's shroud. The dark, slow, lazy blood is its voice. Young Valeria has already gone to tell lovely Anya, who comes right away without stockings. She's still in the process of getting dressed. Her bare feet inside boots that don't match the floor-length skirt she had to hold up with her hands because they can't find the belt. What's happened? What's going on here? The Tsar men shot at us. Where? Anya asks. We were marching up to the Narva Arch. It was swords, not bullets. It was bullets. They came at us with bullets and swords. Hundreds of people are dead. Volodin fell. I saw him dead. He's dead. Yes, hundreds died, and even more are wounded. And Alexandra? Anya asks. None of the unexpected guests remembers what the workers were chanting. 8 hours, Father. That's what they call the Tsar. 8 hours. We want an 8-hour workday. Answer me, says Anna. Where is Alexandra? Loyal Capitonic, the hall porter, rushes in after Mademoiselle Anya. He hates the kitchen. It's full of things that turn his stomach, especially animal parts, but beads too. He hears her running down the stairs, the heels on the boots she's wearing, the scandalous, and after looking in the drawing room and the dining room, he's come to look for her here. Anya notices the body wrapped on the table. Carefully but decisively, she lifts the cloak that covers the bloody form. Lying there on the kitchen table, they recognize her. My Alexandra! 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 It is impossible for Alexandra to hear Anya because she is frozen in time. Her attention focused on one never-ending moment. The grey faces of the poorly dressed, underfed workers look dead, apart from their eyes which burn with anger in this ill-fated uprising. Suddenly, the battalion of Cossacks charges at us, their swords drawn. I saw them brandishing their swords. One blade slit Volodin's throat.